Okay, thank you, Damien. Well, welcome to Gale in Conversation, our new webinar series. Before we commence today's discussion, I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement of country, acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. I'm Laura Whitten, and I'm here today with Damien Almeida. But let me introduce our guest for today. Richard Wilson is the Business Development Manager at DatacomIT. Richard has a background in information technology, and he joined DatacomIT in 2005, where he was a key driver with transforming the business from a data processing company to what is now recognized as a leader in the provision of specialized digitization services, solutions, and equipment. Richard is passionate about the digital preservation of rare and unique materials, and has worked with many of Australia's leading cultural institutions, many government bodies and corporate entities to deliver both creative and effective digitisation solutions. Before I pass over to Damien to commence our discussion, I would like to invite you to use the Q&A feature in this Zoom webinar. If you have any questions, located at the bottom of your screen, you'll find an icon that allows you to type in a question. Please do so. Without further ado, I pass over to Damien.
Thank you, Laura. And Richard, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Just a quick question. I think a lot of people are really interested to find out a little bit more. So can you tell us a little bit about DatacomIT as an organization, what it is that you actually do and services you offer?
Sure. So DatacomIT is coming up just over 30 years in operation. Historically, the roots of the business started in micrographics. So back when the business was first started, they were producing computer output microfiche. So, it's the preservation of records that typically would have been printed out on large format mainframe computers on their printers. And rather than keeping, that large and cumbersome paper records, they were put onto microfiche. So microfiche was used in a number of banking institutions and of course within the library sector, lots of microfilm and microfiche for the preservation of records also. But of course that became a dying form of preservation. Although interestingly, organisations like the Bureau of Statistics still put, you might see when you fill out a census, tick, make my records available in 100 years' time. That information is still put to microfilm because it's a medium in which can be stored for a long period of time and then digitised when needed. So although it's not prevalent anymore, it still is used in certain circumstances. But with the change from that kind of storage medium to digitisation, Datacom started to evolve in the late 90s, early 2000s into providing digitisation solutions. And because we had a specialisation with microform, the business, rather than just providing standard scanning services for paper records or documents or business records, we specialised in some of the more unique and rare material. And so to this date, we've been digitising all of that type of content, whether it be microfilm and microfiche or books, newspapers, maps, plans, photographs, all of those sorts of things. So,
wow, that's interesting. And your offices, are they based in Melbourne or are you based all over Australia?
We've got offices in every state and territory other than Tasmania and the Northern Territory. Melbourne, however, is our head office and our main production facility. So those other offices in the other states are sales offices. So they're used obviously when meeting with clients and the like in those other states, but our main office and production facility is in Melbourne.
Mm-hmm. A quick question about the digitization of all of these records, photographs, etc. When you recruit staff to do these tasks, are there any specific qualifications that you look for when recruiting?
Because a lot of the equipment we utilize uses digital cameras, we look very favourably upon applicants that have qualifications or certainly experience with digital photography, because there is a lot of knowledge surrounding obviously the use of those cameras and and capturing and calibrating those cameras and colour calibration and the like. Thereafter, we certainly look to people with record management experience or experience within the GLAM sector and an understanding of these types of material and content.
That's interesting. What kind of materials would you normally digitize? You did mention a few, like photographs and books. Anything unique?
So we specialise in unique or rare and unique material rather than a standard business document of A4 paper, which you can put on a scanner and press a button and get it done. So that kind of rare materials, all types of microfilm and microfiche, aperture cards, all types of photographic content, whether that be photographic prints, slides, negatives, transparencies, bound volumes. So we've got an array of different book scanners. Robotic book scanners through to manually operated book scanners through to large format scanning devices to do maps and plans. So anything that's anything that's rare and unique is what we certainly specialise in. But we do also do what we call a standard document digitisation service as well. But it's our core focus is on material that you would typically find within the GLAM sector.
Am I right to assume, along with all of this unique documents that you mentioned you digitize, there is a requirement for specialized equipment to be used?
That's right.
So it's not just your regular A4 scanner that we're using over here.
It's not. So there are horses for courses. So yes, there might be a standard document that's A4 size paper in good sound condition that can go through a document fed scanner. But more often the type of material we're doing is rare and unique, different sizes, requires special handling. So whenever we're looking at a job, we'd review and analyse what the material is and determine what the best scanner is. So there might be a book, for example, that we might have a large volume of them, and from a commercial point of view, it might be best to do them utilising a robotic book scanner, which does high volume capture of that information or records, but the condition of that item might not be suitable. So it might have to be captured on a book scanner where an operator is manually turning and capturing each page with care. So there are an assessment that needs to be made on the material and what device is the most appropriate.
That's good. Quick question, what is the importance of digitizing content here in Australia as opposed to shipping it overseas? Why do you think it's important for us to do that in Australia?
Well, look, certainly that's about keeping the content and the security of that content within Australia. There are organisations who certainly value the material that they have and have a preference not only to have it not only done here in Australia, but to have it done on their site because there are concerns about it being transported or the issues with the logistics of transport. So certainly that's a very important factor in people wanting to ensure the integrity of their original source items. But moreover, organisations typically are digitising this content for one of two main reasons. One of which is that preservation, so it might be rare and unique material that they're wanting to preserve so that they can provide access to it without degrading of the original material. And also, the aspect where digitising and adding metadata or optical character recognition to content makes it more accessible. And certainly in this COVID era, there are a lot of organisations out there with collections which are physical in nature, which aren't accessible at the moment. And certainly that digitisation process enables or facilitates that.
Yeah, I think that's important as well. And with regard to digitization, is all of that done here in your head office in Melbourne or across the country?
Yeah, so predominantly our head office in Melbourne is where all of our equipment resides and our main production facility. But there are instances where we will transport that equipment and our route staff to a client's location and undertake the work on site at their premise. But majority of instances, material is transported to our facility in Melbourne.
So it just comes down to a matter of the client's preference, what they prefer, to be honest.
That's right. And certainly from a cost perspective, setting up to do a job on site does encounter a lot of additional overheads. So typically it's, that can become viable if it's a larger project. But it does always have overheads and the management, and all of our processes and things are set up within our own facility.
I just had to ask that just in case anyone was listening in today and they were really interested, if they wanted to contact you to do something, just what are the options available? Yeah. On that note, quite a couple of weeks ago, we spoke with Nick from Alga, and we were talking about one of the recent projects that you completed for them, which was the Archives of Sexuality and Gender, International Perspectives on LGBTQ Activism and Culture. How did you come to get started with this project? Can you tell us a bit about that?
We would have previously undertaken some work with Gale. A while ago we did some early publications, colonial publications, the Melbourne Punch. So we'd previously undertaken some projects with Gale, and so when this project came up, we were contacted to review and have a look at the material. And so that was based on our previous experience in working with Gale before. Oh,
that's interesting. Now, I'm sure with that particular project, there was a select periodicals and books, etc. But what are the obstacles that you would normally encounter with digitizing a project? Are there any specific things that you'd normally encounter?
I guess there's issues encountered on two different sides, one of which is the initial scoping of a project. So, quite often a client will say, oh, look, I've got 10 or 50 items or books or things I like to get digitized, how much does it cost? So some of the harder parts initially is scoping a project and understanding, yes, you might have 50 items, whether they be books or photographs or whatever it is, but quantifying, the format that they're in. So, what size is that book? How many pages does it have? Are there any inserts or any fold outs or those sorts of things that, need, special consideration on how they're going to be captured. And typically when we're looking to provide a proposal to somebody to undertake a project, they're looking for a price on a per page or a per item basis. And that can be hard to provide if we can't quantify, all of those factors. And, no project that we undertake is the same. There are common elements across all projects, but absolutely every single project is different. One project for 1,000 books can be entirely different for another project for 1,000 books, just based on the specification and the format of the items. So.
True, and I think it also comes down to the fragility of the product that you're digitizing as well, because it can be time-consuming. On that note, what was the most fragile material that you ever worked on or had to digitize?
Yeah. It's probably been a number of original newspapers, both that we've undertaken for the National Library. So I guess a lot of your viewers here today would be very familiar with the Trove website and all of the newspaper collection that's on Trove. So typically we've undertaken that work for the National Library, and in the vast majority of cases it's been for microfilm. But there have been some publications where the microfilm of that collection is extremely poor and not suitable, or that the title was of such significance that they wanted to capture a better image of that item. So some of those newspapers are extremely rare and fragile, and turning the pages means having to put in a bracing board, piece of card underneath, and slowly hand turning each item. As you can appreciate, newspapers, when they were originally produced, were never produced with the thought of them being around in 100 years or whatever it might be. So a lot of those bound volumes of newspapers have been very, very rare and very fragile.
I think you had an example at VALA, if I'm not mistaken, as well, showcasing handling fragile documents. And I think the board that you just spoke about, I think I remember seeing that at VALA as well this year.
It probably may have been. We had a book scanner there at VALA this year, as well as showcasing or launching our service for 3D capture. So I don't know if anyone was there at VALA and happened to see that.
Did see that.
We were 3D scanning patrons at the conference, which was a bit of fun. But yeah, I think that might have been on one of the videos you were talking about, where showing some of the work that we've done for that type of material.
I did. I was like a fly on the wall next to your stand, just watching all of that technology, because it
That's
was
right.
quite
I was a fly around your lolly jar every afternoon about 3 o'clock.
Yeah, and we'll have that jar the next time we're back at Vala, so you and everyone else listening are welcome to come there as well. Richard, I just want to quickly say, I mean, obviously you've worked on a lot of different projects over the years, and I'm sure some of them must have been really interesting. So can you tell us a bit about some of the interesting projects that you've worked on over the past couple of years?
Yeah, so there's been numerous, of course, but some of the ones that were both interesting and difficult to do were the likes of, and once again, people will probably be familiar with this if they've been on to Trove, is the Australian Women's Weekly collection. So we were contracted to digitize that for the NLA and did that on site at their Hume repository. And the reason that was difficult in some part was that the content in those magazines was so engaging. We had trouble with a lot of our staff, and when we provide work, we've got a throughput capacity that we've got to get through. But of course, that sort of content was very engaging, and having our staff focused on performing the capture and not reading the articles and the fashion and all of those things. So that was an interesting project, both from a significance point of view in terms of the material, but interesting just in the way in which we had to manage our resources in performing that job. And I think similar to that, we had also done the, not for the National Library, but for the State Library here in Victoria, the Afl Football Record. So for Victorians who are football mad, we digitised the whole archive of the Australian AFL Football Record. And subsequently, once that was completed, we assisted the library to continue for all those new publications. So I think the State Library in Victoria saw a huge increase in their web traffic to their site once those AFL football records. So that was certainly a very interesting project.
Yeah, that's something I'm definitely going to go check out after this particular webinar. Yeah.
So, there's every single publication of the AFL Football Record that's there on the State Library website. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, that's gives me something to do on the weekend. Anything else?
Yeah, one project that was really interesting was for the National Archives of Australia. And this was around the time of World War II. They I guess the Commonwealth created a database, as it was then, but a photographic record of what they termed aliens. So these were immigrants who were not, British citizens at the time, and that was a photographic record of that person and details of where they lived and what their occupation was, and so it was actually a big bound volume. If you can see my hands, about this thick. And on each page, there was up to about 15 individual photos and a name of these people. And that project, we undertook it in two ways. One, we digitized the whole bound volume as a item. So that was each page, but then went back and individually photographed each individual photo at a very high resolution. And all of those records are now available on the National Archives website. And it's an amazing record and photographic record of that register that was created in the early 1900s.
Oh, that's really interesting. It'll be something I think any researcher would really love to explore.
Mm-hmm. And just another one that's just come to mind is one that we completed only in the last couple of years, and that was for the Reserve Bank of Australia. And we digitised the original colonial banking records, and I guess back then it was the export of foreign trade records for Australia. And that project was undertaken at a very high specification, ensuring the utmost of colour management and in capture. And it was a very detailed project and very interesting content as well.
Oh, good. One quick question I had, Richard, is when you do the digitization and the conversion of these, print products or whatever it is, do you also undertake converting them into optical character recognition, doing the OCR for these images? Good.
Yes, certainly when it's typed content. So handwriting, there are solutions out there which do perform, character recognition of handwriting, but typically it needs to be in constrained environments, either where you can teach the system a person's handwriting, or there are expected results, whether that be names or addresses or places. So the actual character recognition of handwriting has still got a long way to go, but optical character recognition of any typed content is very good now, and extremely high accuracy rates for anything that's a typeset. So, and
it is the technology. Yeah, it has improved over the years. I was also going to say, I can relate to a lot of your stuff about, reading the articles in Women's Weekly, because when Laura tasks me to do a presentation on one of our archives, I can get lost in just reading some of the stories in there. It's just fabulous, some of that historical content. With regard to the digitization services that you offer, Richard, what are the products that you offer to the GLAM sector specifically?
So as well as the services to provide digitization, we also sell the equipment. So there are some clients, certainly in the archive sector, and also universities, who, rather than necessarily contracting people like us to digitize it, purchase the equipment to undertake the work themselves. So we are resellers for a range of different book scanners, robotic and semi-automated book scanners from I2S and for digital books. We also sell microfilm and microfiche scanners. So if you've got anybody in your audience today who working in a public library, if you've got a microfilm scanner there, it perhaps is one of ours, and a product known as the ST View Scan. So we've got them in libraries all around the country.
That's good.
So that's the equipment side of things, but we about approximately 18 months ago, we've also taken on the distribution and sale and support of a product known as Recollect. And Recollect is a online collection management and community engagement platform. And since its inception, it's become extremely popular in the local government or local library sector, with organisations using it to host their collections online, facilitate contributions from the community, and also facilitating engagement with that content, enabling people to come in and to tag photographs, or to provide additional information and really enrich their collections. And that's been a very successful product for us over the last, certainly over the last 12 months. And we've got a number of clients in the middle of implementation at the moment, and lots looking at it as well.
Excellent. Do we have any questions, Laura?
I do have one question for Richard. It's been fascinating listening to the examples of some of the projects that you've worked on, Richard, but I'm just wondering, has there ever been a project that's been put to you that you've actually had to say, no, we can't do that, or we're not going to do that?
Only in situations where, because we advertise a lot on the services that we offer, we get a lot of inquiries from individuals. And that might be an individual who has one microfiche, or they've got a book that their great uncle wrote, and they wish to get it digitized. And whilst we do try to undertake that work, there are situations where we've got other projects that are in our pipeline and in production, that stopping those to do one item with 50 or 100 pages is very difficult. So we do find it difficult to do small one-off jobs for individuals, because our environment is set up as a production type environment, and our processes are as such that we work through with our clients to do.
Yep, understand. So it's an economy of size, really.
Just doesn't lend itself well to an individual who might have one or two items, unfortunately.
Okay, and one other question. I'm sure that everybody out there listening to this is probably got in mind a project that they would love to do. Do people contact you directly if they've got queries about a possible project?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we'd love to hear from anyone, and even if it's just about trying to put together an idea of what a project may entail, we're very happy to work with people to help to quantify what it is that you've got, and advise you on what the possible costs may be, so that you can consider it in the future, or hopefully do it now.
Okay.
What I'll do, Richard, is because after this event, we're going to host this on YouTube. So perhaps I'll put your email address in the description box just below the video. So if anyone's interested, they can contact Richard. Just click the email, shoot Richard an email. I'm sure he'll be happy to hear you. We do have one question that's actually come through now.
Yep. There is one more that's come through on the Q&A feature. And it's, Richard, could you tell us about the most interesting document you've ever dealt with?
The most interesting document. Look, I did find that photo book of the aliens from the National Archives extremely interesting. But in terms of actual content, there was an illuminated manuscript that we did for the State Library, and that was, just in terms of the colour and details in that and the age of it was very interesting,
Okay.
and of importance as well.
Thank you. That's all that's come through on the chat, Damien.
I think we've got another one, Laura.
Oh, yep, another one's just turned up. Thank you, Richard. Great talk. You mentioned the qualities you look for in new recruits. Are you looking for people? And I certainly hope that isn't anyone that works for me, Richard.
My hands were free. I haven't typed that, Laura.
No, we don't actively go out and headhunt, but obviously if people come to us looking for work, we're always keen to interview them if they've got the appropriate skills.
Excellent. And we'll put your email address on the video link just below so people would be able to contact you. There's another one come through, Laura.
Oh, we've got another one. This one all the way from someone tuning in from Aotearoa in New Zealand. Great to see Recollect getting such awesome recognition, Richard. Do you have any ideas of free OCR programs us small GLAMs could use?
Look, we obviously use a commercially available one from Adobe, but there are free, but unfortunately, because we do use that commercial one, I know there are some, but I don't know them off the top of my head. But if they wanted to send me through their details, I'm more than happy to check with some of my other colleagues and get back to them.
And thank you to New Zealand for tuning in too.
Absolutely. So we'll list Richard's contact details at the end of the video. Email Richard directly. I'm sure he'll be able to answer all of your questions. Or if you've got any queries about digitization projects, etc., I'm sure he'll be able to answer them as well. Anything else, Laura, coming through?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, Richard, in that case, I think I just want to quickly say thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us this afternoon. I found most of it very interesting. I do want to ask you how much those scanners cost. That's only because the nerd in me. And I promise I haven't emailed him about the job opportunities. That wasn't me. But it was really interesting to hear everything you had to say today. I want to thank you so much. I wish you all the success with DatacomIT in the future. I hope you have the opportunity to digitize some really interesting documents. I know there's tons out there in libraries, and I hope they all contact you and give you that work as well. And to all of our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, we just stay safe, stay well, and keep your curiosity alive. Thank you so much for tuning in today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.